Throughout history, Greek and Roman mythology has always been a fascinating subject, attracting not only those who love ancient culture, but also those who are curious about how ancient people interpreted the universe. Many people often confuse Roman and Greek gods because of different names, but the roles and personalities have many similarities that are difficult to distinguish. However, when we look closely, we will discover interesting differences. So, are the Roman gods really copies of the Greek gods, or do they have their own identity? When we talk about Roman Juno and Greek Hera, we are talking about two of the most powerful goddesses in ancient mythology. Both held the position of Queen of the Gods, were wives of the supreme god, and represented marriage, family, and motherhood. However, there are distinct differences between these two figures, not only in their personalities, but also in the way their cultures honored them. Juno, in the eyes of the Romans, was the embodiment of nobility, tolerance, and wisdom. She was not only the goddess of marriage, but also the patron goddess of the Roman state, accompanying Jupiter in maintaining order and power of the empire. The Romans often mentioned Juno with respect, seeing her as a gentle mother of the nation, always protecting the safety and prosperity of the community. In important national ceremonies, Juno was always one of the most prayed to deities, because the Romans believed that she would bless the stability and harmony of society. In contrast, Hera in Greek mythology has a completely different image. She is famous for her hot temper, jealousy, and often uses her divine power to punish those who she thinks have offended her honor, especially Zeus' lovers and illegitimate children. In myths, Hera often appears as an antagonist rather than a model goddess. This can be seen in her punishment of Heracles for being Zeus's illegitimate son, or her plots to harm women who have been seduced by Zeus. This, I think, reflects two very different cultural attitudes. The Romans valued unity, discipline, and order in society, so their image of Juno had to be associated with those values, a goddess of tolerance, authority, but still maintaining harmony. Meanwhile, Greek mythology is rich in tragedy, complex in emotions and character, so Hera is portrayed as a goddess full of resentment and jealousy, representing the dark side of marriage and power. Personally, I think Juno seems closer to the ideal image that a society needs, a strong woman who is always for the greater good, not letting personal feelings overwhelm her reason. She is not a goddess who only cares about jealousy or personal revenge, but is the spiritual pillar of the whole nation. Therefore, in the eyes of the Romans, Juno is not only the queen of the gods, but also a symbol of prosperity and longevity of the most powerful empire in the ancient world. If you've ever wondered why these two goddesses, despite their similar roles, are so different, perhaps the answer lies in the core values of the two civilizations that gave birth to them. In ancient mythology, when referring to the majestic sea with its fierce waves, terrifying storms, and mysterious power, the Greeks and Romans both had gods representing that power. Poseidon in Greek mythology and Neptune in Roman mythology. At first glance, many people would think that Neptune is just a copy of Poseidon with a Roman name. But when we dig deeper, we will see that behind these two gods is a whole story of cultural exchange, politics, and the hegemonic ambitions of ancient Rome. Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea, was depicted as a majestic god with a powerful trident in his hand. With just a wave of his hand, he could raise ocean waves or cause devastating earthquakes. Interestingly, Poseidon not only ruled the sea, but was also honored as the god of horses and earthquakes, elements associated with strength and wildness. He was worshipped by Greek sailors because they believed that he could protect them during dangerous sea voyages. Meanwhile, the Roman Neptune had a very different origin. Initially, Neptune was just the god of fresh water, representing rivers, lakes, and springs, things that were close to the agricultural life of early Rome. But as the Roman Empire expanded, especially after they began to dominate the Mediterranean coast and became a maritime power, the image of Neptune was gradually upgraded and associated with the sea. This was not only a borrowing from Poseidon, but also a strategic move. The Romans needed a god representing sea power to consolidate power and legitimize their offshore conquests. Personally, I see the transformation from Neptune, the god of freshwater, to the god of the sea as a vivid demonstration of how the Romans used religion as a political tool. They did not simply copy the Greek Poseidon, but cleverly Romanized that image to suit the need to expand their territory and strengthen the people's beliefs. Neptune was no longer the gentle god of the spring, but became a symbol of Roman authority, power, and ambition to dominate the Mediterranean Sea. Interestingly, in art, Neptune is often depicted as Poseidon, with his trident and chariots drawn by seahorses or sea creatures. But Neptune's personality is less emphasized by the rich mythology of Poseidon. This partly reflects the pragmatism of the Romans. They were more interested in symbols of power than in colorful legends like the Greeks. It can be said that although Neptune and Poseidon both represent the sea, each god reflects the spirit, aspirations, and identity of an empire. Greece is liberal and imaginative. Rome is practical, powerful, and ambitious to dominate. And it is from these differences that the story of one sea, the gods, becomes more attractive in the eyes of posterity. When it comes to symbols of love and beauty in mythology, it is difficult to ignore the two names of Greek, Aphrodite, and Roman Venus. Many people often think that Venus is just a copy of Aphrodite, with a different name to suit the Roman language and culture. But if we look more closely, we will see that Venus is not just a copy, but also a goddess image that has been subtly transformed to suit the soul and values of the mighty Roman Empire. Aphrodite, in Greek mythology, is the embodiment of pure love, stunning beauty, and captivating charm. This goddess is loved not only for her radiant appearance, but also for her power to captivate both gods and humans. Stories about Aphrodite are often romantic and passionate, but also full of trouble. Such is the story of her causing the Trojan War with the Golden Apple, or her forbidden love affairs with Ares or Adonis. For the Greeks, Aphrodite was the goddess of emotions, of intense desire, and of tragedies stemming from love. Meanwhile, the Roman Venus took on new layers of meaning. Venus was not only the embodiment of love and beauty, but was also associated with fertility, the growth of land, plants, and even socially despised professions such as prostitution. This difference clearly reflects the pragmatic and practical thinking of the Romans. For them, love is not only a romantic emotion, but also must serve the social interests associated with the maintenance of the race, community development, and the practical needs of people. I believe that the association of Venus with prostitutes is not accidental or negative. In ancient Roman society, prostitution was considered an inevitable part of urban life, and there were even temples to Venus where prostitutes would come to ask for blessings. Venus, therefore, became a goddess of tolerance, regardless of class, always extending her arms to protect even those considered to be at the bottom of society. This is what makes Venus so special compared to Aphrodite. She is not only the goddess of romantic love, but also the symbol of life, fertility, and regeneration. In addition, Venus was also honored by the Romans as a sacred ancestor, as she was considered the ancestor of the Julius clan, the family of the great emperor Julius Caesar. This is also a testament to how the Romans used divine images to serve political purposes and consolidate power. Venus was both the goddess of love and a symbol of the legitimacy of the Roman Empire. When it comes to the supreme gods in ancient mythology, the image of a majestic god holding ultimate power, ruling the sky, thunder, and cosmic order is Zeus in Greek mythology and Jupiter in Roman mythology. At first glance, the two seem so similar that it is difficult to distinguish. But if we dig deeper into the historical and cultural context, we will realize the subtle differences, clearly reflecting the souls and ambitions of the two civilizations that once dominated the ancient world. Zeus, the Greek god of thunder, is not only the ruler of the gods, but also the central figure in countless myths. He is the embodiment of power, but also has many complex personalities. He is both a just king who maintains order on Mount Olympus and a lustful god famous for his countless love affairs, both legitimate and clandestine. Stories about Zeus are always filled with dramatic situations, battles with titans, power struggles with other gods, or love affairs that cause tragedy for both gods and humans. Zeus, in the eyes of the Greeks, is a god who is both respected and feared, full of human nature, with all the joys, anger, love, and hate. In contrast, the Roman Jupiter, although having similar attributes to Zeus, was portrayed with a more political overtone. The Romans rarely talked about Jupiter's love affairs or personal mistakes. To them, Jupiter was the embodiment of supreme power, order, and national discipline. Anyone who broke his oath to Jupiter was considered an insult to the Roman Empire itself. Magnificent temples dedicated to Jupiter were often located in central locations of Rome, such as the Temple of Jupiter, Capitolinus, on Capitol Hill, which were not only places of worship, but also symbols of state power. Personally, I see this as a profound difference that reflects the two cultures. The Greeks loved stories that were rich in humanity and emotion, and were not afraid to portray their gods with both strengths and weaknesses. Zeus, therefore, is both relatable and distant, both great and tragic. The Romans, on the other hand, were more pragmatic. They did not need a god with a complicated personal story. They needed a symbol of unity, a legitimate god who would protect the existence and prosperity of the empire. It is noteworthy that Jupiter was considered the special patron of the Roman state and emperors. Emperors often claimed that their power was granted by Jupiter, thereby consolidating their political position and the loyalty of their subjects. Therefore, the image of Jupiter not only existed in religion, but was also associated with the legal and military power of the Roman Empire. In the mythologies of two great civilizations, Greece and Rome, Ares and Mars are both gods of war. However, upon closer inspection, we will see that the fates and images of these two gods are completely opposite, clearly reflecting the spirit, core values, and views of each culture on war. Ares, the Greek god of war, embodies pure ferocity and violence. In myths, Ares often appears as the embodiment of senseless slaughter, of bloodshed that brings no glory. The Greeks loved wisdom, art, and harmony, so they viewed Ares with caution, even contempt. In the Iliad, Homer's great epic, Ares was not praised as a heroic god, but was often defeated, humiliated, and even laughed at by the other gods. In the battles on Mount Olympus, Ares became the butt of jokes many times when he was injured, defeated, and fled. In contrast, Mars, in Roman mythology, is a noble figure, revered by the Romans as one of the greatest gods. Mars is not only the god of war, but also the god of order and discipline, and is the divine father of Romulus, the founder of Rome. For the Romans, Mars did not represent blind slaughter, but the embodiment of the power to protect the homeland, expand the territory, and maintain peace. The Romans believed that it was thanks to Mars' protection that Rome became the most powerful empire in ancient times. The Temple of Mars was not only a place to pray before going into battle, but also a symbol of collective strength and national unity. The big difference between Ares and Mars is that the Greeks separated war from the heroic ideal, seeing it as necessary but terrible. The Romans, on the other hand, saw war as a legitimate tool for expanding power, protecting peace and social order. Therefore, Mars was worshipped as a patron god of civilization, a true national hero. Roman emperors often associated their power with Mars, seeing it as a legitimacy for their conquests and rule. Personally, I think this contrast reflects very clearly to views on power. Greece exalted intelligence and beauty, so war was only the dark side. Rome exalted order and discipline, so war, under the leadership of Mars, became a noble tool. This is what made Mars an everlasting symbol, majestically depicted on flags, temples, and in the minds of the Roman people for many centuries. And that is why Mars, not Ares, has lived forever as a national hero in the memories of posterity. In my opinion, the Roman gods were not just copied, but also adapted to serve the social and political needs of the Roman Empire. They imported Greek gods, but blended and transformed them to reflect the character and values that the Romans valued. pragmatism, discipline, and an orientation towards collective strength. If you want to learn more about the stories behind the Roman and Greek gods, or how the Roman Empire used religion to consolidate power, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on new videos.